When most people picture the fall of man, they see a very specific scene. Eve, wandering completely alone in the dense woods of Eden, being cornered by a clever, talking snake. But if you actually read the text of Genesis chapter 3, that classic image falls apart. The literal words on the page tell a completely different story. The text says, "She took from its fruit and ate, and she gave also to her husband, who was right there with her." Adam wasn't off pruning vines on the other side of the garden. He was standing shoulder to shoulder with his wife while she was being deceived, and he stayed completely silent. The peace of Eden collapsed under the weight of Adam's silence. To understand the origin of worldly suffering, we have to look past the snake's deception and examine Adam's systematic abdication of responsibility. The timeline of the rules is important here. God gave the command about the tree of knowledge directly to Adam before Eve was created. That put a heavy burden on Adam's shoulders. As the spiritual head of his new home, he had one critical responsibility: to accurately teach his wife the absolute truth of God's command. Looking at this comparison, you can see how the original, straightforward rule morphs by the time Eve actually speaks to the serpent. God said, "You shall not eat from it," but Eve adds a completely new restriction. She says they aren't even allowed to touch the fruit. Because Adam received the command alone, this extra restriction likely originated with him, an attempt to insulate the law by adding a layer of safety that God never requested. Altering the rule distorted the entire picture. It made God look unfairly strict, and the actual command seemed far more burdensome than it really was. When we tweak absolute truth, even for supposedly protective reasons, it creates a vulnerability that an enemy can easily exploit. This created vulnerability allows the enemy to slide right in, silently twisting the truth to completely bypass their defenses. In this exact moment, the active protector of the home should have stepped in. Adam should have argued with the snake, or physically fought back to defend his wife. Instead, he did nothing. He stood by in total passivity, watching as his wife interacted with the threat and tested the dangerous fruit for herself. The book of James eventually lays down a clear standard for this kind of behavior. To know the right thing to do and fail to do it is a sin. Adam knew the exact command. He heard the serpent lying right to his face. By choosing to stay quiet, his silence became a direct act of rebellion. When a leader remains passive under attack, they strip away the protection of their home, leaving their dependents entirely exposed to the fallout. The moment they consume the fruit, the consequences hit. For the very first time, they experience the crushing weight of guilt and shame. When they hear the Creator walking through the garden, their instinct is to scramble into the bushes and try to hide their bodies. God calls out to ask what happened. In any setting, a true leader is expected to stand up, own their domain, and take full responsibility for the failure. Adam immediately deflects. He points his finger straight at Eve and throws his own wife under the bus to save himself. He takes it a step further by saying, "The woman you gave to be with me." He is implicitly blaming God for the entire disaster. Adam's refusal to own his role in the crisis signals the total disintegration of his leadership, trading accountability for a strategy of cross-directional blame. The consequences of the fall manifested in concrete penalties. The ground became resistant to labor, childbirth became painful, and death entered the biological record. Compare Adam's self-preservation to the New Testament standard for leadership. Ephesians 5 calls leaders to act like a good shepherd, one who actively places himself between danger and his flock. This is the model Christ demonstrated. True leadership is active, demanding a willingness to sacrifice your own life to protect your bride. Adam operated in reverse. Rather than acting as a shield for his bride, he used her as a shield to test the danger first. Yet, right in the middle of handing down these devastating penalties, God provides a moment of grace. He issues the very first promise of a coming Savior. This diagram captures the mechanics of that ancient prophecy. The enemy will manage to strike the Savior's heel, inflicting a minor blow, but the Savior will deliver a fatal, crushing force straight to the enemy's head. Genesis 3 is documented as the origin of human sin, but reading it closely reveals a stark warning about the weight of spiritual responsibility. Leading a home requires knowing the truth with absolute precision. It means speaking up boldly against lies, and refusing to sit passively on the sidelines when those you love are under threat.